sister said, I think her earliest and most difficult time starting off was when she was looking after her brother Paul, and as they took him to various medical efforts to try to deal with his leukemia, I believe it was, and that she was, because her mother was pregnant, it was her responsibility to look after her dying younger brother. And so how she looked after him and held his hand and watched him die at the farmhouse, I think had a very strong effect on her. I think the next thing is then we start to see God's faithfulness to her was when, as the war raged, there was a shortage of workers, and from a poor family, she was assigned to go in, she was asked to go into the city, I think it was Cambridge at the time, to work in a factory. And she was terrified to go into that factory. And she was, because she had never been away, she had not been with her family the whole time. As a girl of 9 years old, have to go to a factory to start to work. But I think God was very good to her. The night before she was to go, she had a dream. God gave her a dream. She saw the road going to Cambridge. She saw herself walking into the factory. She saw people in the factory. And she saw the bosses and the assembly line where she was going to work. The next day when she actually did go in, everything was exactly according to the dream that God had given her about what was going to happen. She said this gave her great confidence and comfort as she went in to know that God had already prepared the way for her to go. And I think we see that in her life, how God prepared the way for her to go. As they mentioned, God prepared for her a husband who loved her very much. When I am young, when God also took care of her when I was the troublesome birth that they expected both her and me to pass away and die. Remember, my father first heard about that the doctors had thought that both his wife and his son was going to die. The next was they thought, well, only that they were going to be able to save my mother's life, but I was still not going to be able to make it. And that they suggested that I just be left to die because of the serious brain damage I had suffered. I am very thankful for my mother and her faith saying, no, a child is a gift from God. We will keep the child and bring it home, whether it is healthy, whether it's a fish, whether it can think, or is a vegetable or not, we will still look after it because God has given this child to us. So I am very thankful God's answering and taking care of me. The next trials they went through, as my sister talked about, is how my sister Jennifer, my beautiful sister Jennifer, passed away after 18 months. And the questions about why God, why? My mother knew and told the doctor she had a brain tumor in the back of her brain. And the doctors just replied, we're sorry, Mrs. White, you're an overprotected mother. There's nothing wrong with your daughter. There is nothing wrong with your daughter. Please stop worrying about it. Well, there was something wrong. There was a brain tumor, and she did pass away. I think God used that in her life to give her a ministry to many other people who have lost young children, and also to start a library at our church in honor of my little church library, which I think from the library at Calvary Baptist Church, many people benefited from looking at books there. But most of all in the counseling, as other people were bereaved of children, that she could come along and say it's from experience of having bereavement to be able to share with them. I think this was God working in her life, and then how God used these experiences to help her to help others. I think I see that throughout my mother's life, how God take care of her and guide her into the next step and give her glimpses of prophecy or the ability to tell things that are in the future, which I think is a really interesting gift. I remember her someone coming and saying, wow, your mother's prayer is very powerful. Everything she prayed for me happened exactly the way she prayed it. And my mother basically saying, no, God told me to pray these things because this is what he was going to do. It's not because I prayed that this happened. I just prayed what God told me he was going to do. And so I thought, oh, interesting. So I think, my mother and God, I think God's working in my mother's life was positive in terms of prophecy. Sometimes the gift of seeing the future may not have been the best